we'd like to call this session to order. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for coming this morning. We're really excited to share insights on resilience in the energy system and to hear your thoughts. My name is Meredith Evans. I am a team lead and senior researcher at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, where I lead collaborations across many parts of the globe and with the International Energy. Jal will moderate our session this morning. He works on various domestic and international programs helping.
Thanks, Meredith. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the session today. It's my pleasure to serve as a moderator of what promises to be a thought-provoking and impactful discussion on the topic of resilient energy system. And I would like to thank USAID and SACEF team for having us here. And as always, Jaipur is one of my favorite cities to visit. So the agenda for today's session will have welcoming remarks, and then we'll dive into kind of the presentation by the SAGE team on the work that we are doing in this region, and then we'll have a panel discussion and then closing remarks. So I would like to welcome Naren Chanmugamji on the stage to provide some welcoming remarks. So he's the Environmental and Resilience Office Director at USAID Nepal. Sir?
Good morning. Namaste. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you all to the South Asia Clean Energy Forum 2024. I'm thrilled to see such an impressive gathering of minds dedicated to advancing clean energy solutions from across South Asia. And I look forward to fruitful discussions throughout the day. I'm particularly pleased that you could join us for this session titled Pathways to Resilient Energy Futures, Innovations and Strategies, which is co-organized by the South Asia Group of Energy, SAGE. SAGE is a consortium that includes USAID, US Agency of International Development, and two esteemed US Department of Energy laboratories, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. The session brings together leading experts from various sectors to tackle some of the most pressing challenges in building resilient energy systems in climate change. The sessions will showcase cutting-edge innovations and emerging technologies that are pivotal for driving clean energy transition. Moreover, this session aims to facilitate cross-border collaboration that cater to the unique needs in South Asia. The collaboration between USAID, South Asia, and Department of Energy labs has flourished over many years, resulting in significant improvements and innovations throughout the region. It is encouraging to see these partnerships continue to evolve as we address energy challenges collaboratively. It is also very timely that this current focus on SAGE is on collaborative studies, analysis, modeling, and research with partner South Asian institutions. Nepal is a stunning Himalayan landscape, serves as a vital long-term partner for the United States, and plays a crucial role in the stability and connectivity of South Asia. In Nepal, USAID is working closely to enhance the commercial and operational performance of the energy utilities. Our efforts focus on advancing cross-border electricity trade with neighboring countries and developing the necessary technical frameworks, regulatory systems, and power purchase agreements. With that in mind, the South Asia Group for Energy work on hydrological resources is particularly timely for enhanced resilience of Nepal's energy sector. As a country rich in water resources, effective management, and year-round utilization of our hydropower capabilities is essential. We at USAID Nepal and the government of Nepal are eager to engage in regional initiatives that promote hydropower projects, especially within neighboring countries such as India and Bangladesh. Such cooperation can pave the way for technology transfer, investment opportunities, and improved market access. However, realizing this potential requires Nepal to address several challenges, including infrastructure, regulatory barriers, environmental consideration, all the while fostering these partnerships. And these issues, I'm sure, are not just unique to Nepal, but throughout the region. Initiatives like the South Asia Energy are crucial not only for addressing exactly these type of complex resilience challenges throughout the target region, but also for empowering local institutions, research bodies, and the private sector. This grassroots approach enables our local workforce to develop their skills and capabilities, ensuring long-term sustainability. As we proceed with this session, I'm excited to hear from our distinguished partners and panelists, whose insight will surely enrich our understanding of this critical issue. Again, thank you very much for USAID, the Department of Energy, the South Asia Regional Energy Partnership for their hard work in organizing this event. I look forward to our discussions and exploring innovative pathways towards energy future. I'm hoping that you guys are able to have a fruitful discussion, sharing of minds as we come together with this important issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for such an insightful remarks. It has certainly opened new avenues for discussion. Unfortunately, Alokji won't be able to be here because he was called for an urgent unplanned meeting by the CM, but he sends his regrets and wishes good luck. So now I would like to call on the stage the SACE team to set the context and share the ongoing work that the SACE team is doing in South Asia, as well as share successful case uses that enables resilient energy future. So we'll start with Adarsh from Enroll, followed by Meredith. Adarsh?
This is quite amazing how well this has come up. Not long ago, we were planning this session and we were thinking, how can we get the dignitaries to our session? And it's amazing to see how it has taken shape and form. And thank you Narenji for such insightful remarks. First of all, thanks to SAREP for enabling this stage. Without SAREP team's effort, we could not have done anything to this extent. Thanks to USAID for your extended support, and all of you for taking time to be here with us. I'm Adarsh Nagarajan. I'm the lead for South Asia Group for Energy. I am a researcher at the National Renewable Energy Lab. Meredith and I co-lead initiatives in SAGE, and you'll hear from my colleague as well. Before we get into the context setting, I want to spend a very little time, quickly introduce who we are, just so that we enable more collaboration with you all in meaningful ways. We are a collaborative team comprising of two national labs, as you heard, the NREL and PNNL. Our core goal is to advancing clean energy solutions across South Asia. In front of you, most of the tables, we made sure there is a little card, handy card, so you can visit our webpage, learn more about how you can collaborate with us. We as a team have various solutions that exist for your use, and you can reach out to us anytime via email or through USAID or SAREP for any collaborative opportunity in the future. Thanks for that. So what have we done so far in South Asia? Let's take a minute to figure that out. Our team has a privilege for working with a wide range of organizations in South Asia. We collaborate with government sector, decision makers, and private sector equally and beyond that. This list of organizations you can see here are some exemplary ones. Our collaborations go beyond the list, and our initiative in South Asia exceeds a decade. It surprises me when I say that. Of course, it goes beyond me. Some of our leaders at the national labs have enabled this pathway for us. The SAGE team has worked in institutions with ministries in India, in Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh, we cross-cut various technologies. We go beyond solar and wind and bioenergy, hydrogen. You'll hear from us as we talk. All of that have been possible strictly because of the support from USAID and the implementing partners such as SAREP. So that's the context. Let's begin without further any delay about the context for the session. So setting the mindset here. So what are we talking about in today's session? It's about setting pathways towards a resilient energy future. What does it mean? Let's take a minute to reflect and enable us for a meaningful time to be spent. There are many ways. When we say pathways, as you can observe, it's a plural. There is no one way that leads us to a stronger future. There are many ways that can take us. It's analogous to climbing a mountain. There are many ways that can take us there. There's no one way that takes us there. So we have figured what are the key essential components that can take us there. So there are 3 pillars, as we call, that can essentially take us there. That's what has been shared in the concept note and prior knowledge with us. Strategies, innovations, and collaboration. We believe those are the 3 key things. Strategies enable us to develop sustainability, strengthen resilience across sectors. These strategies focus on addressing critical challenges such as climate change or beyond climate change, and help us design a robust system to adapt. Innovations. What does innovations do? Strategies provide a good confidence on how can we take the path, but innovations provide clarity on how to make it happen. Innovations help us with, say, setting up ways to advancing energy sector with cutting edge technologies, software and hardware to make things happen in real world. That's dependable, affordable, and setting up enablement at the end. All of that should lead to meaningful collaborations. We as national labs can come up with good solutions, but without collaborative partners, end users, our solutions will not be of any use. So that's where collaboration is the milestone for us. That's where SAGE, supported by USAID and SAREP, is what we see as a critical partner for us. Collaboration helps dialogue, engagement, and the most important, cross-sectoral collaboration. Cross-sector is very critical for us. Not one or the other will make a wholesome path happen. Cross-sectoral pathway is very important for us to address complex issues that cuts beyond just power grid, just energy sector. It's way beyond everything. For the next 15 minutes, my colleague Meredith and I will speak a little bit about how we as a SAGE team have addressed these 3 key pillars in ongoing work at our national labs. We will showcase lessons learned from across the world and also South Asia so that we can enable a pathway for a future that we all can think about. And we sincerely hope this will lead to a meaningful conversation in the panel as well. So let's talk about the very first pillar, strategy. How does it work out? Okay, there's something happened there. Let's give it a minute. I think system restarted. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take a minute to use the time here. So there is a common path that enables us here, which is so when we enabling resilient future, the common path all countries are taking. So let's get into the content. There are many pathways, as I said, enabling resilient future. The common force that's changing in all the countries around the world is integrating clean energy technologies. So the question that we want to raise here is, does clean energy technology integration increase resilient future or jeopardize resilient future? It's a thing we should think about. That's something I want to spend a minute on this content is how does it impact? Based on our interaction with more than 1,000 communities in the country of United States and also outside USA, we have figured out that to a greater extent, 100% clean energy system improves resilience in many ways. You will hear from me on how to enable it. For example, here you can understand some of the top priorities that get enabled because of clean energy technologies are it reduces environmental impact, which means it slows down harmful environmental changes for the future. A little bit of inconvenience now will reduce the consequences in the future. So that's one critical impact. Clean energy technologies also enable a decentralized power possibility, which means where power is generated, it can be stored closer and utilized closer, which avoids possibility for shutting down one generation plant impacting the whole country or worst case scenarios like that. Clean energy technologies also enable local control, which means when there is a local production of energy, management and maintenance, it's less susceptible to negative impacts on crisis. This also enables diversity. This is so true for countries already very high on clean energy like Nepal and Bhutan. They are very high in clean energy generation, but enabling diversity is a critical component as well. And last but not the least, to me it's the most important, the consequence is improved health. This improves, it reduces air pollution, increases air quality, subsequently improves public health and lowers healthcare costs. There are various consequences that clean energy technologies enable, and which these strategies help us understand it's a good path. The question that we need to ask is how? How can you make all this happen? So that's where innovation becomes very important. Confidence without clarity is not sufficient. So innovation brings clarity to enable a resilient future. Integrating innovative technologies is key to enhancing grid resilience, reliability. Especially the future that we are looking with extreme heat waves, extreme cold storms, all that's happening is very important. At the same time, we need to make all this affordable. All these changes should not also make grid too expensive. All of this put together becomes a complex question that we should think about. We need hardware technology integration hand in hand with strategic analysis. In the panel today, you will see the panelists we have invited, and they are so kind to sit with us. They will bring both spaces so meaningfully, and I'm confident you will like it. Innovative technologies such as long duration energy storage, black start, microgrids, hydrogen technologies, let's not downplay that, also hydro technologies, alongside with resilience informed planning, social burden analysis, energy burden, enable a just transition. All this put together makes a very complex question that we need to answer. The critical component that we need to keep in mind here is, as we say as a SAGE team who are very good in creating solutions, will not make any difference unless we have partnerships who support us and who work with us. We at the NREL have enabled 3,000 communities in just USA, tribes, jurisdictions along with technical assistance, capacity building, and a lot more. We have also worked outside the country of USA, including South Asia, Africa, Lithuania, Ukraine, to help various needs in the countries. For the next minute, I want to just showcase one flagship effort that NREL led, what we call the LA 100. It's an open web page. Please go take a look at it. That's where we were able to collaborate with the country's, USA's largest municipal utility, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. We provided rigorous integrated engineering economic analysis to explore pathways to 100% renewable energy. So some of the questions we were able to answer in that particular domain were, what are the pathways and costs to achieve 100% clean energy supply, which is also resilient and reliable? What are the potential benefits to environment and health? How might the economy respond to such a change? If a country takes such a path, how will the economy change? How can communities shape these challenges and prioritize environmental equity and various components of justice? All of this put together, we were able to focus on very critical questions. This led to very important outcomes. Last but not the least, I will end my content on collaboration in South Asia. There are various ongoing opportunities in South Asia, which is already taking steps towards the context of this particular session, which is Resilient Future. The opportunities that we are engaging in is enabling future technologies such as energy storage, particularly the long duration energy storage along with lithium ion, inverter-based resources, leveraging advanced technologies such as grid forming inverters will be very critical, and also future clean energy technologies such as offshore wind, pathways for that, hydrogen enablement, and geothermal, including incubation spaces. We see significant potential in applying our insights to South Asia. Some are already ongoing by leveraging SAGE team strategies, advanced technologies, which are tried and tested in few thousand communities around the world. We can support South Asia's goals for resilient and reliable energy future. With that, I will pass the mantle to my colleague Meredith. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Adarsh. So I'd like to share just in my presentation some examples of the styles of work that PNNL and the SAGE team have done across the United States, and also how we've been able to bring that to South Asia. In general, a lot of PNNL's work on decarbonization looks at it from a holistic perspective. So we look at the integration between different systems, whether that's looking at it from the perspective of the electricity system connected to buildings or connected to transportation systems, transmission systems as they integrate with distribution systems, distribution as it understands the integration of electric vehicles, solar PV, and then also looking at that in the context of the overall economy of emissions and so on. So today I'll briefly touch on analysis for decarbonization planning. My laboratory, the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, has provided the core analysis behind both the US mid-century strategy in 2015 that defined the US's commitment on climate change, and then the updated US long-term strategy in 2021. And then we're working with Niti Aayog in India and a range of other partners under the SAGE Sustainable Growth Working Group along similar veins. We're also working on resilient decarbonized power analysis, both in the United States, looking at the future of hydropower, and then with colleagues from Bhutan, including colleagues who are here today, and looking at it again in an integrated perspective where you can see in the chart on the right, looking at the energy system, but also from the perspective of how it interacts with other systems, the economy, land, water, to develop planning tools, to do capacity building, that then simultaneously can ensure that we're focusing on resilience, but in a decarbonized world and in a world that meets the needs of people across multiple aspects, that is affordable, that is clean, and so we're thinking through those co-benefits of the system as it transforms. So looking in a little bit of depth at the US long-term strategy, the White House released the latest version of this in 2021, right before the Paris Agreement was, right before the COP of that year. The mid-century strategy was right before the Paris Agreement. And it included integrated assessment of different pathways and as well as a core pathway presented here, as well as resilience analysis to ensure that that pathway was in fact resilient and met people's needs. We looked at the total net emissions and how existing policy might bring down those emissions, and then what additional action was going to be needed. So that included action both in the power system, but also using electricity to create green hydrogen, and looking at land use and land use change, looking at other fossil fuels and where there may be needs to offset any residual fossil fuel use, looking at non-CO2 gases like methane that likely will remain to some extent and how to mitigate those. And CO2 removal technologies as well. And so looking at it from that holistic perspective, we were able to assess the costs and benefits of multiple options and pathways to help the White House and other US government agencies determine what looked like optimal pathways that avoided pitfalls, but also produced the most economic benefits for the US as we transform the economy. And then pivoting to collaboration in India, PNNL has been working with NITI Aayog for over a decade on multimodal analysis, on integrated assessment of India's energy system. Of late, NITI Aayog has been using that as support for the National Energy Policy, which will be coming out early next year, as well as the latest nationally determined contribution and long-term strategy describing climate planning. And taking this approach and also building NITI Aayog's own capacity to do deep analysis of the options and trade-offs, I think has been really helpful for both NITI Aayog, but also for the other ministries that it collaborates with and the Prime Minister's office as they work together to sort through these options. We also were really pleased to be able to collaborate with NITI Aayog and a range of other partners, including CEW, that Vaibhav Chaturvedi represents, in creating the India Climate and Energy Modeling Forum that provided multiple teams to be able to assess different options that look at both decarbonization, but then also aspects like economy, water shortages and energy waterland analysis, air pollution, and so on, to provide a holistic approach that the government of India could then use as a foundation to consider its policies in this space. And that, I think, stands as a long-term remaining capacity that India can draw on for decades to come. It's somewhat akin to the energy modeling forum that we have in the United States that also provides a backdrop for policymakers. Under the Sustainable Growth Working Group, as I mentioned, we've collaborated to conduct analysis that's been used for India's national energy policy, but then also building the capacity of multiple institutions to strengthen policymaking focused on resilience and also clean energy development. And then in parallel with that, we've collaborated around energy statistics and enhancing the methods for collecting, compiling, integrating, and promulgating energy statistics for decision-making. NITI Aayog has launched a platform that pulls from multiple data agencies across India called the Energy Dashboards 2.0. And it's a premium place where anyone can go and see this data in a clear and consistent format. The US Energy Information Agency has come in and also provided significant support on methodologies. Because ultimately data is a foundational component of decision-making and of being able to do solid analysis to inform that decision-making. On the right, you can see a chart that describes sort of these integrated approaches where you can simultaneously look at energy, but also understand for arid regions like parts of India, how that intersects with water and water scarcity. with land and the competing needs for food, with climate change itself, which will impact energy systems. It'll impact energy demand for cooling. It'll impact water available for thermal cooling, and socioeconomics, and so on. Moving on to my second and final example, it's about hydropower and resilient hydropower factoring in future climate change. So in the US, we've been working to come up with consistent information and data looking at the future of US hydropower, examining the impact of climate change across the United States and how it'll impact the output of hydropower. We relied on standardized scenarios for, called shared socioeconomic pathways that allow policymakers to understand in a consistent way what climate futures may mean, what that world of those future emissions looks like in terms of our economic development and growth. And then we take that output in terms of the climate impact and we apply it into the future in a consistent way so we can understand what that means for precipitation, for example, and also what that means for key demands on the electricity system. So this in turn provides a baseline for national scale assessments of climate impacts to hydropower that serve a broad range of stakeholders, from grid operators to energy planners, energy policymakers, and so on. And in the figure, you can see the outputs on one low year. Right? The hydropower planners often look at the low years and what that can mean in terms of the system they need to design for when there may be the lowest amount of hydropower available in certain regions, such as around California. Next is what we're doing in Bhutan along those similar lines. So collaborating with the National Center for Hydrology and Meteorology, as well as the Department of Energy, and we're really happy to have our colleagues here today, and Green Power Corporation, doing fine-scale hydrology modeling of all 4 river basins, somewhat similar to what we've done in the United States, creating consistent data sets looking at future climate change and the impact on hydropower, while at the same time looking at the integrated perspective of how those changes and how future low carbon development is going to impact the energy system in Bhutan and change electricity trade, for example. We're also doing training to build capacity around these modeling capabilities across multiple agencies in Bhutan. And we're ensuring that the different modeling frameworks are coordinated and consistent. So that provides national scale capacity and data sets on the climate impacts for water and energy so that a diverse range of stakeholders can do robust planning and policymaking and investment. And then just finally, my last slide, I think there are multiple benefits of taking a multi-sector approach. This chart shows some of the co-benefits that it's possible to get information on from this modeling framework that can be really important for decision-making, whether it's around air quality and health, and understanding the implications of any energy choice on that, or it's around consumer well-being, such as food consumption or energy consumption, employment, investment, other economic indicators like trade, or just the pure greenhouse gas emissions, as well as related impacts on land and water. So there are a range of different indicators that one can get that can enhance the ability to make wise decisions in a world that considers systems as they exist, meaning as they are in a holistic way. So with that, I would like to close and turn it back to Jal, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Meredith and Adarsh. So now I would like to call all of the panelists on the stage. So in the next 1 hour, you will hear from each of those panelists what their organizations are doing to make the energy system more resilient. So in the panel, we'll start with Vaibhav Chaturvedi. So Vaibhav Chaturvedi is a senior fellow at Council of Energy, Environment and Water mitigation strategies for India, and Vaibhav is dedicated to provide data-driven insights that inform policy support, India's sustainable growth and climate goals. Thank you, Vaibhav. Next, we'll have Karma Doji. He's a Director General at the Department of Energy, Ministry of Energy and Natural Resource. He has been instrumental in Bhutan's renewable energy initiatives with special focus of development and integration of green hydrogen in the energy mix. Next, we'll have Samit Midigapspe. He's the Deputy Managing Director at State Electric Company Limited in Sri Lanka. He brings over 30 years of experience as an engineer at the Ceylon Electricity Board, Sri Lanka's major electricity utility. Thank you. And then we have a virtual participant. Can we have him on the screen, please? Amit. So Amit Tripathi is advisor at the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Energy Systems, CDRI. He specializes in power sector, including transmission, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and climate change. Thank you, Amit, for joining us virtually. And last but not least, we have Ranju Pandey. Ranju Pandey serves as the Director of the Power System Management Department at the Nepal Electricity Authority. Thank you, ma'am, for joining. So, again, thank you for being here. So as we begin our discussions, I encourage you all to engage openly and share your insights and consider how collectively we can advance the goal of energy resilient systems in this region. So as my colleagues mentioned, right, the three pathways for resilient energy systems are kind of collaborations, innovations, and strategies. So building upon that, my first question is to Vaibhav. So Vaibhav, we know that India is one of the fastest growing economy of the world and has set a goal of going net zero emissions by 2070. And Council for Energy, Environment and Water being a think tank, right? Can you share your thoughts on the role of think tanks in helping governments define energy future and recognizing the need of resilience at the same time that India grows and evolves?
Great. Thank you, USAID, NREL, and SAGE for inviting me over. I'm very happy to be here. Very good afternoon to all the colleagues in the room. So in terms of the role of think tanks, that's your question, Jal. Think tanks I think there are three very important roles that think tanks perform. First is about informing the framing of an issue. And I think framings are always very critical. Framings, and I think an example would be, if you look at India's framing for its participation in the climate debate, it's about development and equity. So that is India's framing. That mitigation is extremely important, but it cannot be at the cost of development, and equity considerations are absolutely paramount. So development and mitigation have to go hand in hand. Something like that. So now that's a framing thing, and we need framings for many different issues, different kinds of issues on the table. So one is about thinking about framing. How do we frame issues and ensure that the framing is actually widely adopted? So that's one role of the think tanks. A second important role, I think, is about informing through research. And that's absolutely critical. Research is, this is a very new area especially for a developing economy. And in terms of the way global markets are shifting, global energy markets are shifting, and very interesting ways it could play out, and the implications for a rapidly growing economy, it is not, the implications are not so obvious. So you always need a kind of a sophisticated research to inform potential pathways that a country could undertake for achieving a particular policy objective. In this case, we are talking about net zero. The government of India already has a stated target. So informing what should the target be, what are the alternative pathways in terms of achieving towards the target, how do we ensure that we maximize economic opportunities on the way, also minimize the potential risks. So it is not given at all that this is just an opportunity space. We should very well know that there are also risks on the way. If we don't understand them proactively, respond to them, ensure there are certain guardrails, so those kinds of things. Only research can inform those pathways. So that's the second big role for think tanks. I think the third very important role is about capacity. Building capacities of the larger ecosystem, be it the government ecosystem or the civil society ecosystem or the academic ecosystem, is going to be very, very important for informing these pathways. And any developing economy, the capacities you could imagine at different levels. For example, there could be capacity at the national level, there could be capacity at the subnational level. The state of play is very different in the moment you start changing or looking at different governance levels. The state of understanding of a particular issue is very, very different. So the role of think tank is to better understand, map out those capacities, and find or inform ways to how do you build capacities at these different levels of governance. So ultimately, the collaboration that you talked about, we need to ensure that all the people who are collaborating also are capacitated to collaborate and engage and inform the debate. So those are the three important roles, in my view, for the think tank ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaibhav. So I have a follow-up question. So again, I agree, right? Development and mitigation goes and needs to go in hand, right? But can you share some of those case examples where think tanks and governments have worked together, basically, to lead to an impactful kind of resilient strategies in India through the work that you have done?
Sure. Yeah. So I think if we look at either the process of our, let's say, deciding on the net zero year, as well as thinking about what kind of NDC targets should the government adopt, what kind of enhancement, what level of enhancement are we looking for, or what is ambitious within the context of a particular country. So those kinds of things is where think tanks and governments actively collaborate. So I lead the modeling team at CW. So the role is that you chart out alternative pathways. For example, before the government of India adopted a 2070 target, there was a lot of deliberation with India's civil society, between the government and the civil society, academic think tank space, which kind of talked about alternatives to this. Everybody in the world, most countries were talking about 2050. So now is 2050 sensible for India? What does it mean in practice? What are we talking about if 2050 is adopted? What kind of the pace of transition we're talking about? What are the potential economic opportunities or challenges in the process? Now we do a lot of this kind of analysis looking at 2050, 60, 70, 80 alternatives. And then there is a kind of consensus emerging through deep discussion and brainstorming across the civil society and government in a partnership kind of format. And through that, a kind of answer emerges. In this case, it was kind of 2070. Similarly, the case of updating NDCs, now the new NDCs are going to be on the table. So those kinds of things, one example, there could be many examples, but of course I can talk later also, but this is one example of how the collaboration pans out.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Right, yeah, we need to be ambitious, but at the same time be realistic as well, right? So thank you so much. So now, my next question is to Karma Dorji, right? So Bhutan is renowned for its commitment for renewable energy, primarily hydropower, which accounts for the significant portion of energy generation. However, the reliance on single source brings its unique challenges, right? Especially in the face of climate variability and changing precipitation. And Bhutan's ambitious goal of maintaining the carbon neutrality adds another layer of complexity to its energy planning to bring all of the sectors together. So with that context, what planning challenges does Bhutan face to maintain resiliency of the energy system while meeting the socio-economic development goals and maintaining carbon neutrality?
Thank you, Jal. Would like to appreciate the invitation extended to Bhutanese delegation, especially to the SAREP and the SAGE, and of course supported by the USAID. Right, so what's petroleum to Arab countries? Hydropower is the white gold for Bhutan. And I say this with the rationale that all over we are talking about alternatives, diversifying the resources For us, a modest size of around 38,000 square kilometer, we have a potential about roughly theoretically in excess of 40,000 megawatts. And then that we have assessed in terms of the economically around 32,000 megawatts. So what that means is if you do conversions per capita in terms of the potential resources, I think we are up there. In fact, highest in the world. So that actually leads to my sort of thought process in which for Bhutan, hydropower is the mainstay of our economy, where it contributes almost one third of the GDP, and perhaps this isn't sort of a benefits, especially with the visionary, the thought process that our monarchs have actually spelled out many years back, and today we are enjoying the fruition of that. Perhaps when you also look from the environmental perspective, constitutionally we are mandated to maintain not less than 60% of the forest cover. I mean the native forest cover for all times to come. And today we are hovering around 70% of that covered under the forest. 52% of the country is into protected area. So essentially, when I talk about hydropower, we are just confining to areas where it's actually outside the boundaries of the biological corridor, the protected areas, and let alone the agri sort of lands and the settlements. So in that sense, as I mentioned, the hydropower contributes a third of our GDP, and that's where we have been sort of continuing to focus our efforts, whether it we term it as a long-term planning energy strategy. The hydropower becomes a central sort of a theme in that. Yes, of late, because of the vagaries of the climate change, we are not spared. In fact, the Himalayan sort of the region is highly vulnerable to climate change. I think I need not actually emphasize that. The headwaters, the glaciers are melting at a astronomical sort of rates. So in that sense, much of the hydropower that we have put in place are all run-of-the-river schemes. So there is an inherent sort of issues with run-of-the-river schemes in that, the dependence on the energy from the hydropower obviously becomes a seasonal sort of an issue in that. For the last 2-3 sort of winter seasons, we have been importing from India. And fortunately or unfortunately, our demands are actually growing, which is actually, in some sense, showing the robustness in terms of the region as a whole, where the economy is actually being construed as fastest growing region. That actually then brings us a formidable sort of a challenge in terms of how do we actually meet the energy self-reliance, energy security. At the same time, how do we ensure the economic sort of a security? So those are two sort of sides of the same coin. In many ways, we have different pathways. Easier said than done. We could easily sort of resort to doing a conventional ways of meeting our energy, but then that's not the path we have taken. And therefore, what I'm sort of alluding at is hydropower will continue to be a mainstream energy resources for us. At the moment, we have harnessed something like less than 7% of our potential, and we see ourselves, the demand growing. I think last night we were talking in the corridors where the SACEF has actually looked at using the IA energy resources in terms of what could be the growth in terms of the energy appetite, especially in the region, doubling by 2040. Whereas we are sort of pitching in, we are going to see 7x, 10x in just about 5 years. So that's a kind of growth in terms of the energy demand that we are foreseeing. So therefore, hydropower is going to be a natural choice for us. We think that there is adequate space for us to actually grow and continue to harvest what is going to be a remnants of, if at the end, none of us are able to sort of achieve the climate goals, at certain point of time. At the same time, as I mentioned, we are just 38,000 square kilometer. And today all of us are talking as if the solar is going to be the solution for all of us, so-called as a resilience of infrastructure. But we have a challenge in terms of the space, in terms of the land use, So essentially, yes, we have recognized that at some point we'll have to diversify our resources. But then is the solar going to be sort of a next sort of a natural choice? We think there is a space for solar as well. And that's why we have moderated ourselves in terms of the targets, looking at something like 5,000 megawatts of solar, at least by 2040 site. But then, as I mentioned, we do have a lot of, not just a technical challenge, but also economic and social challenges in terms of how we are able to harness, complement doing the solar as a next best thing. So essentially, when you look at these sort of scenarios in which, whether we call it a short term, medium term, long term, at the end, what's of importance, significance to us is that we are already a carbon negative country. And the challenge for us is how to maintain at least the neutrality part moving forward. So in that sense, ours is 99% hydropower based sort of energy system. And moving forward, that's where we see not only in terms of the generation side, but also on the demand side, we got to address at least taking the resilient, low carbon sort of a growth. In that, much of the energy appetite, if you look at today, is actually emanating from the industries themselves. So in that sense, how do we address the transport sector? How do we address the residential sector? How do we address the industrial sector? So that's why we could, I mean, my take from the presentation that was made by the PNNL and REL, at least to me, it sounds like it's going to be a very complex sort of a landscape. But at the end, the simple sort of a solution that I foresee is how do we ensure that these electrons are actually emanating from a green sort of sources, and that's the challenge moving forward. How do we ensure a resilient energy system that is actually, not impacted by vagaries of the climate change, vagaries of the economic sort of dimensions, but at the end, all we, as my colleague just pointed out, in terms of the equitability, in terms of the economic sort of, I guess, the priorities. So how do you balance this out? Remains to be seen in many ways. Some of the projections shows that there is a way out, but then obviously much of these are going to be projections at the end. What's practical at the end of the day is something that we have to sort of move towards and try to realize that at some point of a time. Thank you.
Thank you. And kind of key takeaways, hydropower would still be a main resource, but you are diversifying to solar to reduce the imports in the winter months, and space constraint is a challenge. And on that, right, there's a lot of innovations that is happening, right, on agrivoltaics, right? So that could be a potential solution. So thank you so much. So building on that, I would like go to Ranju. So again, Nepal has estimated hydro potential of what, 8,300,000 megawatts, with around 43,000 megawatts technically feasible. But as of now, Nepal generates what, 1,400 megawatt of electricity from hydropower. And with the rapid urbanization and economic growth, Nepal is experiencing increasing energy demands, right? And the grid operator must ensure, right, that the energy infrastructure can meet those demands while at the same time adapting to the climate change and the impacts, right? So from the grid operator's perspective, how is Nepal Electricity Authority planning for a resilient energy sector, particularly in the face of hydro generation may get impacted with the climate change? Could you please?
Thank you, USAID and SACEF team, for inviting us and giving opportunity to represent my country and the energy sector of my country. And thank you for the question. First of all, I want to correct that our total installed capacity is 3,300 megawatt. And in 3,300 megawatt, 95% is from hydropower plant. And even in the hydropower plant, 65% is from run of the river hydropower plants. So we have excess power, as mentioned by my colleague from Bhutan. We have excess power during the rainy season, and we have deficit during the winter season. And in this case, we are using our regional network, the power trading, cross-border power trading for meeting our shortage and selling the power, surplus power in the Indian exchange and through bilateral process. In India, we have been selling power around 1,000 megawatt of power to India during the wet season, and we have also recently done the agreement with Bangladesh, tri-party agreement to sell 40 megawatt power to Bangladesh through Indian grid, using the Indian grid, using the infrastructure. And this is one of the mileage we have covered. And at present, we are using the border trading to balance or to balance our energy supply and demand. But however, our government has already developed the policy to diversify our energy mix. According to the government policy, we will going to have around 35 to 45% of ROR generation from the ROR, and 25 to 30% from peak run of the river plant, and around 25 to 30% from storage and pump storage power plant, and 10% from other variable renewable source plant. According to the government plant, Nepal Electricity Authority has recently floated the bid for buying 800 megawatt of solar power plant to for the mainly for balancing our dry season demand. And and similarly, as a result of the policy, now there are a lot of power plant in the power purchase process, and a lot of storage plant are also applying for the power purchase for the power selling. And similarly, storage power plant are also applying. So that is for our long-term plan, how to we diversify our energy mix. And however, at present, we are using our cross-border network to balance our energy demand and to have our security in our grid system. And similarly, we are also having the electrical vehicle. We are promoting the electrical vehicle. Government has promoted to promote the electrical vehicle. We have also subsidized the tariff, and also tax is also subsidized. So now, at present, the mobility from the electrical vehicle has been increased in the country itself. And cooking stove, electric cooking stove are also promoted, and a lot of electric cooking stove are replacing this fossil fuel. And we also in NEA also we have this one department unit for this green hydrogen unit, so that there we were in the initial stage we go for the training, and we are just starting the one unit for this green hydrogen promotion. And yeah, these are the things we are doing. And similarly, even though we are working in the diversifying this energy sector, but we are the hydro blessed country, so we have also the plan to have 28,500 megawatt hydropower plant within 2035, and the government has planned to supply the 15,000 megawatt in the region, Southeast Asia region, and remaining to consume itself in the country. So we believe that our hydrogen hydropower will not only provide the green energy in our country, but also to the whole region from India to India to Bangladesh, and maybe in future to Sri Lanka also. So that is.
Thank you, Ranjuji. So looks like Bhutan, Nepal, you have similar model, runoff river, right? And one of the key strategies to enable resilience is diversifying energy source, but keeping in mind, right, like hydropower would still be the main energy source. And you mentioned about electrifying, right? And then you also mentioned about the green hydrogen, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But let's go to Smith. So from what we have heard so far, right, each country is facing different challenges, has its own set of challenges, but unique opportunities as well. So as an island nation, Sri Lanka might also face some unique challenges when it comes to clean energy transition, right? So have Ceylon Electricity Board in the midst of deregulation, planning investment and deployment to enable resilient energy sector.
Thank you, Jal, and thank you, SACEF, SAGE, and also USAID, of course, for inviting me to this panel discussion, as well as for inviting us from Sri Lanka, the many delegates, to this event. As Jal wanted to start on or touch on the economic aspect, economics, of course, will play a major role. And I will start from there because Sri Lanka has to, in its plans, we have about all the installed capacity in Sri Lanka is in the range of 5,000 when you take into 5,000 plus when you take into account the rooftop solar as well. And within 5 years, if we are to achieve our policy target of 70% RE, we have to install another 5,000 plus RE plants. And basically, it would be solar and wind because our hydro resource is almost tapped. And that itself brings a huge economic requirement from the investment aspect. And Sri Lanka is facing, as you would know, we are just coming out from an economic or financial meltdown. And that itself, and being a small size of whatever the investments, that both together has posed many problems to investors or from us as the buyers from CEB or the other Sri Lankan agencies who are involved with the private entrepreneurs, is that they are unable to bring those prices which are available to others to Sri Lanka for this RE development. So that is the first aspect that I would like to touch upon or mention. And also a new thing that is coming up with the renewable is the ultimate requirement of transmission. Transmission is the key issue in getting these. I don't want to go to details, but most of our renewable resource which are available not in the load centers but far away. Of course, hydro was same, but it was manageable. But here we need very large transmission investments, and how we get into this transmission investment is the issue. At the moment, we have been trying to package it together with the plant, the transmission line. So the transmission line investment is also from the developer or the IPP who is coming for the power plant. But what we are seeing is that is forcing pure power plant operators or specialists on power plant not to come into this aspect. So that is another issue that we are facing. And then I will go into another aspect. I will be touching sort of specific issues just to showcase the issues that we are facing. And when you talk about the variability that is coming from wind and solar, which we have to accept, one of the solutions that anybody who sees Sri Lanka and the Indian subcontinent and all of your interconnected grid is interconnection. Of course, the interconnection has been studied at various times, and very recently also we have done the second feasibility study. And the techno-economic aspects are something that, of course, we can touch upon. You can elaborate and study and finish, which is ongoing. Of course, the technical aspects, also there were some issues. First, it was a submerged cable, then it came back to an overhead one. But now it is again going to submerge, and with that, the costs have gone up. That and the costs, who is going to buy, who is going to sell, and the technical, that is one thing. But I would like his words, being an island nation, we have our own mentality. So this interconnection with the Indian subcontinent or with India has its own aspects of socio-political dimensions. So that is also a thing that we all, I mean, Sri Lanka, not CEB itself or the utilities who are going to come up after CEB once the restructuring, which is now undergoing, is done. So it is the policy makers as well as the society will have to adapt and change or to have this materialized. If some, which I have done for other reasons, if you read the history of Channel Tunnel between UK and France, you will understand the mentality or the aspects that is seen from Sri Lanka, which some of you may see as, not logical. But of course, those are the things, socio-political things have to be handled if you have to get into the technical realizations. Then another thing is at the dispatch level, the Sri Lanka's, our CEB System Control Center or the dispatch center is anticipating huge issues with the incursion of large number of variable RE. Of course, it has already happened. Just after the recent elections, there was a public holiday which was not planned and declared. And on that day, the system control faced a huge issue of whether to shut down a coal plant or not, because the demand had gone down drastically. But this is just a showcase of one day, but it is with 5,000 megawatts coming into a 5,000, system. This is going to be an issue. And I must thank USAID and NREL. They have done an initial study on one of the answers to this as having a renewable desk. And they have given 5 aspects of monitoring, forecasting, all those things, what should come into the renewable desk. And they have sort of given us the initial pathway of how this could be implemented. And as a first step, I think the System Control Center will be upgraded to at another location. And with that, with some investment, which we hope will come from, because this is going to be a government venture, will come from some multilateral agency or for a country with concessional refinancing, that renewable desk is going to be an absolute necessity in the coming future. And another thing that we are seeing is the rooftop, because rooftop seems to be the most easiest and popular method at the moment. But it is bringing its own problems, especially the overvoltage issue at low LV level. And we are seeing complaints from prosumers or the people who are having solar panels of their solar system getting tripped because of overvoltages. Because in the urban centers, everybody is having now solar panels and it is at low voltage level. And to overcome this, and then there is the complaint from consumers that the voltage levels have somehow gone up and their equipment are not working. So this is, with the inclusion and the addition of further rooftop, is going to be an issue. And the country's regulator, PUCSL, has already started a consultation process, and they are of how to mitigate this. And they are working on 2 methods. One is to having control of the inverters, and the other is to have what you call this the voltage specifications of the system, which is at 6% now. The system to enlarge it to 10%, but both have its pros and cons. So that is being studied, and in the future, of course, we will have to go on that pathway. And as the last aspect, I would like to touch upon the issue of environment clearance or land, which of course may not be a technical issue as it is per se, but it is something that we are facing. When Sri Lanka's land is concerned, it is a land scarce country where population density is high. Where land is available, it is either a forest land, wildlife land, or a coastal land. So how to develop these lands? And also whether arable lands should be used, especially for ground-mounted solar. So that is a policy matter that will come up, that is coming up in the future. So with that, touch.
Thank you so much. And it's good to hear that the SAGE team was able to at least help answer the first question that you had. And regarding the rooftop solar, that's an issue, right? And then the solution would be control of inverters, and even Brazil and Australia are having those issues as well with more of rooftop solar. So next we'll have Amit. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Perfect. So as the world grapples with the impacts of climate change and increasing the energy demands, building energy systems, right, has never been more critical. And in South Asia, where diverse challenges such as extreme weather events and rapid urbanization are prevalent, and resilience becomes essential for ensuring energy security and sustainable development. So keeping that context, can you please reflect on CDRI's experience with resiliency efforts across South Asia and the globe? And then how do resiliency challenges in South Asia's energy sector compares to the challenges faced by the rest of the world? And what are the role of collaborative efforts? Sorry, I have asked many questions. We'll start with the first one. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Joel, and thank you so much. I think your question requires 2 hour session just on discussing around that things. But anyways, I'll try to sort of wrap it in a much more condensed way. So first of all, I think let me thank and take this opportunity to thank USAID, SAREP, and SAGE team to inviting us on this conversation. And generally, we tend to sort of miss out the physical risk aspect to the climate change on the impact on the power systems, and which I will sort of delve upon it. So my name is Amit Tripathi, and I'm from Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. It's an India-led IO, international organization focusing on disaster resilient infrastructure and primarily focusing on 4 key critical infrastructure pieces, which is power, transportation, health, and telecommunications, which are primarily being impacted due to the climate and geophysical risk globally. And with that context, I think in the power sector, I would just like to sort of highlight why these critical infrastructure pieces, because at the end, these critical infrastructure pieces provide essential services which are being provided by government, public sector, or through concessionary agreement by the private sector. And concessionary agreement by it's an authority which provides by bidding authority or on behalf of state and people. And looking from the paradigm of the power sector, and I don't need to tell the audience over there that the key 3 paradigm of power sector historically have been access, affordability, and reliability. And that's what we have been sort of, as a system planner, as a regulator, as a policymaker, always try to unlock the challenges, the problems, and solutions from these 3 paradigm of access, affordability, and reliability. But with CDRI's sort of experience of working in this space, we tend to sort of advocate the sector to also include resilience, another R into this 3 paradigm, and make it a 4-leg sort of thing, which is look at access, affordability, reliability, and resilience. And I'll try to sort of develop on the South Asian experience that we have and I will try to answer the question from the hazard profile that South Asia faces. And we have a diverse sort of panelist from mountain region, from the coastal regions to and so forth, and hazard profile changes and impact on the power system also changes accordingly. So to begin with, east coast of India and large part of coastal India is prone to the high cyclonic winds. And specifically, if you look at the state of Odisha, which is quite prone to the high cyclonic winds, and as we speak today, in another 2 days, cyclone Dana would be sort of hitting the coast of Odisha with a speed of 120 kilometers per hour. So it has a huge impact on the power system, specifically transmission and distribution network. And we have seen in 2019 Cyclone Fani, which had impacted Puri. I think landfall was in Puri in the state of Odisha, and with a speed of 220 kilometers per hour, and which had an impact of almost sort of more than 200,000 poles were damaged, more than 100,000 kilometers of lines was damaged, more than 12,000 of transformers was damaged, and which led to the recovery cost of almost close to 1.2, 1.3 billion US dollars. and which I'm talking, and these numbers are quite staggering and quite big, looking at the state of power sector in the Odisha as a state and their ability to restore it completely. So in that sense, we did a complete study for the state of Odisha, where we mapped entire T&D infrastructure from 765 kV line till 11 kV line, mapped it on the hazard profile, hazard layer, and came out with a vulnerability assessment, criticality assessment, and also the prioritization assessment, primarily basically a complete resilience risk assessment of each individual assets with respect to the cyclonic events. And there were certain sort of remarkable findings that emerged out of it. And I'm telling about those findings primarily from the perspective to understand that where and why it's very important to look at resiliency of power systems, especially through the extreme wind events. It's an aging infrastructure. 75% of the lines are more than 3 decades old. More than 80% of the lines, distribution lines, have a span length of more than 40 meters, which is close to 70 meters. And the building, so these are the challenges that's been in it. Wind zone. So one of the big risk governance aspect that came out very categorically for this thing, that the standards that were set up to build infrastructure in South Asia are of 28th century. And it's important to build standards for the 21st century. So primarily to highlight wind zone maps in India, last updated in 2013-14 from the data set of 2007-8-9. And that data set itself was not really holistic, and which has a huge gap in assessment in that. So it's very important to include these things in standards, because primarily the infrastructure that you build is based on the standards that you give to the asset owners and to the EPC contractors. So it's not their fault if they're building it incorrectly. It's the fault of basically the risk governance side of it. Then, so of course, this is one big work that we did, and we like to scale it up in South Asia and globally as well. Another aspect, if you look at the hazard profile specifically and where we are, so we have a community of practice primarily focusing on early warning system and decision support system and impact-based forecasting for hydropower sector. Why we realize it's an important piece of work that we would like to do, primarily. So if you look at some of the recent example in last 5 years in South Asia alone, and last October in Sikkim in India, where we have seen the asset of more than 1200 megawatts was washed away within 10 minutes from the glacial lake outburst, GLOF event. So of course, India has a capacity to absorb that shock. Right, it is an integrated grid system. 1200 megawatts at some place, loss of 1200 megawatt at some place can be adjusted through somewhere else. But looking at the impact, for example, in Bhutan or Nepal, where they are trying to build such a large asset, and those large assets would be built primarily with the intention of exporting power to South Asia. So of course, the techno-economic feasibility and the commercial feasibility also look and sort of sits on the whole premises whether it's climate resilience or not. And we have seen that like GLOF is a big challenge, whether it's for the run-of-the-mill small hydropower plants that you're talking, which you have in Bhutan and Nepal, but also reservoir-based plants. For what happened in Sikkim was primarily a reservoir-based plant, But we have seen in Nepal, I think my colleague from Nepal can sitting in the panel can tell you more about it. A flood in a couple of months back in Nepal led to severe damages to a lot of run-of-the-mill hydropower projects in Nepal. So of course, there's an issue around that. Insurance is one solution, but insurance is expensive if looking at the risk profile. So it's very important to sort of invest in a long-term mitigation effort to build resiliency into these assets. Now, the third big type of hazard profile which I would like to talk about is heat. Heat is not something which is like cyclone or GLOF or flood. Of course, it gets impacted and it's news more. Heat is like a slow death. And I would like to talk about slow death primarily because from both supply side and demand side, and we have seen specifically with respect to the grid system that we are building right now, which is the RE-led system. But to be honest, I think, again, our audience and the people in panel would agree to me to a certain extent that electricity as a commodity is still an expensive thing to store. And we don't have a right answer to have an optimal system to do that. And why I'm telling you for that perspective, because in India, we have seen, for example, this summer, we had a longest heat wave season historically. So heat waves generally sort of moves around in 5 to 7 days of period. where you have a high sort of a heat, high temperature, close to 45, 46. This year we had almost 45 days. And what it led to also, the whole phenomena because of the urban heat island effect and also and so forth, hot day and hot night phenomena. This means that the peak demand is not just at certain point of the day, which is primarily it used to be around evening, around the afternoon, but it's get prolonged throughout night, till late night, and which poses a great challenge to the grid operators because of course, solar is there. For example, in Indian context point of view, solar is available during the daytime, right? But during the evening, of course, when you switch on, you go back to your home, you switch on air conditioners because it's already during, even at 9 p.m. in the night, you have 42 degrees centigrade. And with the urban heat island effect, it makes it worse. So, of course, you'll switch on the air conditioners, and of course, you have more air conditioners due to economic growth and so on and so forth, which poses a great challenge, I think, which led to a sort of a larger question of how utilities and regulators are assessing the demand. So, thumb of the rule, things won't be working, and we have seen that utilities have been sort of implementing thumb sort of a back of the envelope calculation around demand forecasting in India. But we have realized that certain period of the time in the year, this is going to be very tricky and very complex. As Adarsh has just said, that things would get really, really complex to going forward, and this we need to be looking quite specifically. And demand forecasting needs to be very, very specifically, and because we see that the peak demand management can lead to the excessive balance sheet costs to the utilities. For example, in Tamil Nadu, of course, they have been facing this issue from several years. I think we're managing the peak load and then getting excess power from the market, and then of course paying the higher prices. And of course, we have seen also how market operates right now, and which leads to sort of a very larger complex issue of what is the right set of tools in order to address these things. So I just wanted to sort of just share that some of the work that we are doing in this. So we're studying on the impact of extreme heat wave on power utilities. We're working on early warning system and impact-based forecasting for hydropower. We have already looked at the cyclonic events and its impact on the T&D infrastructure. Plus, additionally, we are looking at the force majeure, contract law, standard building documents, and concessionary agreements of building power infrastructure. We are studying the national infrastructure pipeline and looking out some of these aspects of how to build resilience and integrating into this contract law. So these are we're trying to address different pieces. Of course, there's no straight jacketed approach. There's no one answer to it, but these are being offered. In terms of the collaboration, Joel, I think I just wanted to highlight, I think America also faces the similar challenges. And NREL, PNNL, and the DOE labs have been trying to address some of things in a larger way. And we look forward to collaboration in order to address these things, because this is something very niche, very new, and which requires much larger debate and advocacy work throughout the globe as well as in the region. And we like to focus and work more on that thing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amit. And I truly echo on the last point, right? Like, definitely collaboration. We need to all collaborate, share lessons learned and best practices, right? It's not a competition, right? So again, thank you so much. And I know we are short on time, but I'm going to ask one more question. And if the panelists could be very crisp on their comments, right? Let's say one sentence, okay? What are the technology and innovations that you are excited that will enable the resilience, and NREL, PNNL as well? Please feel free to chime in as well. So we'll start with Weber. So in your modeling, right, what is one technology or innovations that you are excited for in the next year?
Well, I think more than the tech, I'm excited about innovation on business models. Okay. If I could answer it that way, I think there's extremely very interesting models are emerging, and I think a lot of tech will be pushed in the market with the help of business models. Okay.
I think all our discussions are premised on the fact that there are still some naysayers in terms of what are the realities of the climate change. Unless if we take that as a premises, then I suppose we'll have to go with this either too sort of optimistic or too sort of unrealistic sort of moving forward in terms of, because in terms of building a resilience has a lot of connotations. Is it a physical? Is it a policy? Is it a strategy? So in that sense, there's no sort of, as the earlier speaker mentioned, There's no actually sort of a cookie cutter in many ways. But for us, building a resilience, at least at the current juncture, is to address issue in terms of having a physical components of building infrastructure, at least at every sort of district level. In case of natural calamities or natural weather events, then at least we have the assurance of having a reliable sort of a source of those energy. But at the same time, the choices are often than not, pretty much constrained in terms of the resources. I mean, at what cost are we going to build in such a resilience? So suffice to mention that we have to address the root cause rather than looking at the end solution, because unless we have the a difference in the what are we assuming, I suppose there could be many sort of pathways, and that's the challenge moving forward. Thank you.
Actually, I have worked in the system operation department. I think that the smart grid and good infrastructure, reliable distribution and transmission line would be the best technology, and
Recording in progress.
digitalization of the grid, smart grid, and when we have the some sort of conference, somebody from Germany told that they used to do the scheduling from AI, and also the bidding from AI within 0.05 seconds they have put the bid. So that makes us so exciting. So if we can do it here in the South Asia also, it would be good.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if others or Manila, do you know any technology or innovations that you are excited that enables resilience?
Yeah, so if I could pick one technology, I would say digitalization. Figuring out how to understand what the data are that allow you to look at multiple different systems and how those different systems are integrated, which then facilitates the business models, facilitates the policy making, facilitates the collaboration across different levels that is ultimately critical to resilience.
I like the answer Ms. Ranju provided. The ability to dispatch and control the resources is something, a gift we can give to the grid community.
That's Amit.
So yeah, Joel, I think one thing which I want to sort of harp upon and which I sort of seeing is, which I would like to see more, is cross collaboration between different agencies, because I am working right now in a sector which requires multi-stakeholder, different people talking to each other regularly, just to sort of put an emphasis, because climate risk data is not a utilities domain, so it has to come from utility, from meteorological department. Standard setting is a separate body. Manufacturers and technology providers separate. So we require much more deeper dialogue among these cross-sectoral people who are going to sit together. So I'm excited and I look forward to having such conversation more often. Thank you.
Thanks, Amit. So that's all. Please join me in thanking the panelists for the great insights. So thank you so much. Thank you. And now I'll hand over the mic to Manali to give the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Jal, and all the panelists. Great discussion. I know we are also at the time for lunch, so I'll not hold you for a very long time. But thank you to all the participants who were here. As we conclude the first session of SACEF today, I want to take a moment to reflect the valuable discussion we have had today and note the significant strides we're making in advancing resilient energy systems across South Asia. Particularly, the last question, I mean, many of you picked up one of the key themes or key innovations you're looking forward to, whether it's best practice, business model, looking at innovative business models, AI, or, looking at some of the technological solutions and the collaboration which Amit also pointed out. So that's something which we as SAGE and USAID, we will be looking forward to, reaching out, collaborating with all of you. as stakeholders in the energy sector as well as institutions that are working in this space to collaborate and work together. I have prepared these remarks, but I'm not going to read them through. I think, the discussions were very enriching. There are several things we can work on. This is a new theme, at least from the power sector point of view. Just to plan and to work on resilience is something which is very critical for South Asia, especially since the region is susceptible or, has climate change, can be impacted by climate change. So that's something which we all realize, but we have not focused so much on the resiliency part of it. So that's something which SACE is particularly looking to work on and is looking to work and collaborate with all the government stakeholders as well as non-government stakeholders, think tank in South Asia in order to take these discussions and collaboration forward. With that, I once again thank all our panel members who spent their time and, shared their thoughts with us, and all our participants who are in this session, especially thanking our colleagues from USAID Nepal for setting the context and welcoming all the delegations here, and also to our organizers from the SAGE team as well as SAREP and APP team who have put this session together, and hope that you will have a great discussions and great, interactions, networking, meetings with all the key stakeholders from South Asia who are here for SACEF 2024. And with that, I think we can break for lunch. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.